So good morning to everyone. I think we have completed this EJB evolution in the last lecture. We are going to start with the new topic, that is enterprise bean containers. Okay. So as you all know that what do you mean by enterprise beans? It is something which is present inside your container, EJB container. I gave you an like information about that where and how this EJB container is going to work. So if you have a server. Okay, so in our case, in enterprise Java, in our case, which server we are using it, we are using Glassfish server. Okay, and in that Glassfish server, we are going to have number of containers present for different technologies. So if I talk about the servlet technology, it is going to have a servlet container. When I talk about the JSP technology, then it is going to have a JSP container. And when I talk about the EJB technology, we'll have a separate EJB container. Okay, and when I talk about the enterprise bean, so enterprise bean is nothing but it's a normal Java programming language. Okay, the Java programming language which is trying to implement the EJB technology. Similarly, what we have done it in our servlets. So what we have done there, we had a Java code. I always tell this, the servlet is not a Java file. The servlet is a technology which we are trying to implement inside a Java program. Okay, so until and unless we are not going to make my Java program understand that I want to use this specific technology, we'll be using the normal Java programming language. We'll be using the normal Java concepts. Okay, so if I want to make use of enterprise Java Bean technology in my Java file, in my Java code, or if I want to embed the EJB concepts into my Java code, what I have to do, I have to make sure that container is going to understand, okay, this Java programming is not having a Java basic, things which is going to be executed, but it is going to have something called as enterprise bean. Okay, so the EJB we are going to implement, we are going to write the EJB code inside a Java code. Fine. Now, the technology is what we have written by making use of Java programming for a server side. Okay, so whatever applications we have developed and whatever technologies we have learned, it is all meant for the server side application. So talk about the servlets. Servlets are also considered as a server side language for the application which we can develop for a servers. If I talk about the JSP, it is meant for both for the client as well as the server, because JSP is allowing us to embed the Java code. Okay, and that can be separated and can be given to the Java bean where the Java code is going to get executed. Similarly, for the enterprise bean, or you can say the EJB, okay, it is also going to be used for developing the application for the servers. Okay, and there also we are going to use a Java programming language to do that. So whichever application we are going to develop is going to consisting of the business logic, or you can say the program logic or application main logic, which is going to have the transaction, or which is going to make possible the transaction between the client and server, and you can say server and the database. Okay, always remember these three layers. So we have a client, we have a server, we have a database. Okay, so the transaction which is needs to be happen between this server to the client and the server to the database. So it is going to happen when we are going to write a proper and perfect business logic inside the server application. Okay, who is going to deal with all this communication. So enterprise Java Bean is also one of the technology which we can use to develop a server side application, which is going to take a help of a Java programming language, and it is going to contain some business logics. Okay, the EJB container is going to provide a local and the remote access to the enterprise beans. So now here, if you have to understand that we have an EJB client, we have a server, and we have a database. Okay, or you can say the Java Bean where all the data are stored. So now, if you remember the diagram, I can just go back to that diagram. I'll show this to you first. Okay, so if I have an EJB client, I have a server, and I have an container. Inside the container we have three things. One is a home interface, one is a remote interface, and one is your EJB bean. So whenever a client is going to send some request or want to establish any communication, what is going to happen, the request is going to pass to the server, and then server is going to identify that okay, this request is coming from the EJB client. Okay, so it has to be redirected to the EJB container. Fine, so EJB container is going to be found here, and in that we have two things, that is one is home interface and remote interface. And if you remember, I told you in the last lecture that EJB home interface is going to take a request, is going to give the data to the remote interface where marshalling and unmarshalling is going to happen. That means the conversion of the data. Okay, so conversion of the data of an object to the byte data is something known as marshalling, and the reverse of it is known as unmarshalling. Okay, and then finally whatever you have converted in the byte form is been executed by your EJB bean, or you can say the Java bean. Okay, who is responsible to execute the Java files, who is able to execute the Java code. Okay, so this is by assuming that your EJB client has been written in the Java language. If the Java language is not been used for writing the EJB client, if any other languages like .NET, PHP or JSP has been used, so what we can do is we can make use of web services. Okay, and you can place the web services in between, who is going to work as an intermediate between your EJB client and the server. And then web service is going to be considered as the language independent. Okay, so it is going to understand the language of the client also. It will make the server also to understand that what client is trying to say and what is, the client is trying to access and request. Fine. Now, after that, the container is going to have some responsibility also. The enterprise bean container, or you can say the EJB container, so is responsible to register the object or the instance which is been created for each request, or you can say for each client. As I told you in the last lecture, the container is going to create an instance or an object for every request or for the every client, so that the container is able to understand the request and the client while giving the response. Okay, so it will register the object, it will register the client, it is going to provide a remote interface for the object. That means it is going to have that remote interface where marshalling and unmarshalling of the data for of an object is going to happen. Also going to check a security for the object. That means it is going to check an authorization of the request, or you can say of the client which is going to come, and your container is going to identify that request or the client with the help of an object. It is going to create and destroy the object instances also. That means it is responsible to create an object for every request. It is also responsible to destroy the object once the transaction is over. And then it is also helpful for developing a distributed transaction. For every client we have an option to have a concurrent transaction over the containers. Multiple clients can access simultaneously the enterprise bean containers. Okay, so that is something known as distributed. Now, the following is what container is going to do for us. It is going to allocate the resources for the request, what we are going to give. It is going to manage the life and the death of the enterprise bean. That means the life cycle of a Java beans, which we are going to create. It is also going to convert the beans, what we are going to create. Beans means Java code. Okay, consider that. So don't get confused what do you mean by beans. Beans is something, it's a Java code. So whatever code we are going to create is going to convert that code into the distributed format, so that everybody is going to access it. It is also going to serialize the request. That means the conversion which I told you, marshalling and unmarshalling thing. So it's going to do that with the request also. It is going to maintain the conversational state of the object, that whatever has happened between a client and the server in the form of communication is going to be maintained. It is also going to manage the database transactions. So we have a EJB client, we have an EJB server, obviously we'll have a database. So after the execution in the EJB bean, the data is going to be either placed into the database or the data has been fetched from the database. So that transaction of the database is also going to be managed. It's also going to maintain the persistent data, that is the data which is considered as a the backup or a copy of a data of a database is also going to be maintained. Then it is going to help us for registering and deploying the components. And this we can do, like it is like registering of a you can say the object or an instance what you have created or your server has created for a client. Okay, Now, what all benefits we can have for the EJB 3.1? That is, it is very much simple, lightweight. It is very easier to use. It is going to remove all the restrictions of obtaining the class loader. That means we are just focusing on business logics. As I told you in the first lecture, we are going to completely focus on business logic, only the logic which is going to, communicate with client and the database. We are not aware about what client or the web designer is going to do with the client end. So we are just going to remove all those restrictions. We are just not going to use a plumbing code. We are going to have a relaxed default rules in terms of EJB, so not so much of rules and regulations for building the application using EJB. We are going to have the session beans invocations, and we are going to have much more time saving options when we are going to switch to the EJB for developing an application. Now, which all benefits, more benefits we have for the enterprise bean? As I told you, it is going to completely focusing on business logic, or the Java code which we are going to write using the EJB is going to be live and is going to run inside the server under the control of your EJB container. So whatever EJB code you are going to generate in the Java language using the Java language, it is going to be executed inside your EJB container. Always remember, servlet is going to get executed in servlet container, JSP is going to get executed in JSP container. Similarly, the EJB is going to have its own container to get it executed. Okay, and it is going to provide so many infrastructure services, or you can say the benefits like security. It will have a concurrency, that means concurrent users can use it concurrently, and we can have a transaction management, the transaction which can be between your client and the server, or it can be your server to the database. It will help in networking, it will help in resource management, messaging, persistence. So these are all the benefits of the enterprise Java bean we have. You can learn few of the benefits whenever you're going to write in the answer paper. Now, developers are going to use all those services, what we have learned just in the previous slide. They can use all these services during the deployment of an application, and they'll require a very minimal efforts and time to deploy the application. Okay, so if they're writing using the EJB, and if they're writing in the Java programming language, they're implementing EJB, so they'll be having a relaxation, they'll be having they can implement all those services what we have learned, like security, messaging, persistence, all those things with minimal efforts and time. Okay, they can also have a reusability. That means the enterprise Java bean or EJB is able to have the reusability feature. It can be reused in many other different applications where EJB is used, so you can reuse the block whatever you have written for one application to the other one. Then we have the portability. It is completely based on Java technology basically. So the EJB, as I told you, is a part of a Java language. So it is going to carry forward all the features what Java is having it. So portability, you can say write once, run anywhere. You can have any platform where you can, make sure that you can run your program, and the developer and the user are both going to, able to utilize this kind of a feature. Next is going to give you an architecture which is going to be the most simplified one, and which is going to help you to build an application in a little bit faster, and then in a very small span of time, with a simple architecture you will be able to develop a complex enterprise application. Fine. Here the EJB model is going to allow you to have the developers who can concentrate only on business logic. As I told you, the web designers are there who's going to design for the client. Okay, they'll be concentrating on the formatting of the client pages and all those things. It's not a part of the EJB developers. Distributed deployment, that means you are allowed, if you are using EJB, and you can create a system which can also be called it as a distributed system, where you are allowed to have the deployment of an application across the multiple servers over the network. Then lastly, it is application interoperability. That means if you want to go without, like, beyond the platform, as I told you, if you are using an EJB for a server side application, it is preferable that you can go with the EJB client which is written in Java. But if not, if you want to go within some other language, you can go very easily. Just the thing is that you need to implement the web service. Okay, and I told you in the last lecture that what web service is. It is something, you can say, a software component which is going to be placed between your client and the server. The client can be your EJB client, your server will be your EJB server. And to make the transaction happen between the different languages used by the client and the Java language which the server is using it, so their web service can play an important role. We have learned two type of a web services, that is SOAP and REST. Okay, so SOAP is a protocol and REST is your architectural model. Now, the very important topic of this chapter, that is your types of enterprise bean, definitely and guaranteed there is going to be one question. So if you have to attend three question out of this whole unit, I am giving you one question right now, that which question is going to come in your question paper, that is types of enterprise bean. Okay, so now here we have to understand that we have two types of enterprise bean. Okay, so that is, one is session beans and one is your message driven beans. Okay, why we need an enterprise bean types? Because there are number of options available, whether we want to maintain the state of the transaction which is happening between the client and the server, whether we don't want to maintain that conversation, or we want to maintain this the state or a conversation till the time we are on the application, till the time the client is on the application, that much only data we want to maintain it. So all these things we have to understand, that how it is going to be helpful for us, and how the enterprise bean is going to provide us, how EJB is going to provide us. So we just have to understand that what do you mean by session bean. So first type is what your session bean, second type is what your message driven bean. Okay, so the first type is what your session beans. So session bean is going to encapsulate all your business logic, the business logic which you're going to write it for your server side application, okay, which is meant for the servers or meant for the EJB servers. So the session bean, first of all, you have to understand, is going to be helping us to encapsulate the business logic. Why is that so? Because the code what we have written, okay, is going to be invoked by the client. So whenever client is making some request, so based on the request, whatever methods we have written in the EJB code or in the business logic for the server is going to be invoked accordingly as per the request. Okay, so it can be accessed by your local client, it can be accessed by your remote client, it can be accessed by your web services. So to make sure that whatever and whoever is going to access your business logic or your Java code what you have written for the server, and it has to be from the authorized people, so it has to be encapsulated, and whoever is going to give a proper authorization, they'll be able to access the business logic. Okay, session bin is also going to be useful for having the calculations and the database access. So it is also going to help us to build the transaction and communication between the server and the database. Okay, now, the session bean, the life cycle of a session bean is going to be maintained, is going to be taken care of by the EJB container. Always remember, whatever is going to happen with your EJB is going to be done by the EJB container. Okay. So what we have learned in the session, that is going to help us to encapsulate the business logic. Why? Because there are a number of people from around the world is going to access your business logic, which means whatever code you have written, okay, inside your server is going to be accessed by the number of clients. So that client can be the local client, it can be the remote client, it can be the web service which we have implemented between your client and the server. And we have said that the life cycle of all the session beans what we are going to create is going to be maintained by the EJB container. Now, in short, what session beans are, it is going to execute for a single client. It is going to be transaction aware. That means it is going to know that what is happening between the database and server, between the client and the server. It is going to aware. Okay, it's not going to represent the data, the which are the shared data directly in the database. That means if I am having 2-3 tables and if the data are being shared between them, so the session bin is not been able to represent that type of a data directly from the database. It is going to be short lived, as I told you, is not going to be for a longer period of time. So whatever transaction data, whatever state you are going to be maintained, it's not for a longer time, it is for a short life. It's not going to have a persistent in a database. That means the database copy or a copy of an object of a database is not going to be maintained by the session bean. it is going to be removed one if at all the container is going to crash. That means whichever code you are writing it, whichever state or the transaction is happening between client and the server. So if the container is going to crash, so the new session needs to be re-established by the client. So in session bean, we are going to have three types. One is a stateless, one is a stateful, and one is your singleton. Now, we'll see one by one all those types of session beans. In stateless session bean, in a very simple term, I'll tell you that it is not going to maintain any type of the state of a session which is going to happen between the client and the server. Okay, is not going to remember anything whichever is going to be asked by the client, and whichever client wants to invoke any of the method from the business logic, and as per the request whatever it is trying to access it is not going to be remembered by your session bean. That is something called as stateless session bean. So while developing a code using EJB, if you are trying to implement a stateless session beans where you are saying that your application what you are developing for your server should not remember any state or any conversation which is going to happen between your client and the server, you can implement stateless session bean. Okay, so that's why it is going to be said that it is going to be having a good performance because it is not maintaining anything, and it's going to have a good performance. It's going to be lightweight. It's going to have a scalability also. Now the next type is what your stateful session beans. So the stateful session bean is exactly the opposite and reverse of it. Of the stateless session bean is going to remember all the conversation which is going to happen between your client and the server application. Whichever client is trying to access any of the methods or trying to invoke any of the methods as per their request, so the client and the server transaction is going to be maintained. All the communication is going to be remembered by the stateful session beans. Okay, so these are the some snippet or the code which you're going to write in your program, in your Java program, or you can say in your EJB program, where you can make use of stateless session bean, you can make use of stateful session bean. So if you are trying to use a stateful session bean, so you're making your application to remember something. If you're making use of stateless session bean, you're trying to make your server not to remember anything. Okay, so now here if I'll just give you an example, okay, just assume whatever I'm saying it, so you'll be understanding in a more better way. So if you have seen that NetBeans platform what I have shown you in the picture form in one of the lecture. So there we tried to create a project. Okay, and while we're creating a project, I told you that we need a server. So we had a Glassfish server. We decided that we're going to use a Glassfish server, and inside the Glassfish server I have many other containers. Okay, so it can be a servlet container, it can be your JSP container. Now we have another container, that is EJB container, who is responsible to execute your EJB code. And that is nothing but it's again a Java code, Java program, which is consisting of some EJB concepts. Okay. Now, this stateful, stateless, singleton session beans, you can just assume that it is a sub container. Okay, you have a big container, and inside that you have a small containers. That container is one container is going to be a stateless session bean container. You will going to have a stateful session bean container. You will be having a singleton session bean container. Okay, so if you want to implement any of this sub container in your program, that means whichever application you are developing and you want to execute that application inside in any one of the container, that either it can be a stateless session container, it can be a stateful session container, and singleton session container. Okay, all these three types of sub containers is having their own definitions that how they're going to work. So if I am going to execute my Java code where I have written some EJB program, and if I'm trying to execute that using the stateless session bean container, is not going to maintain any state whichever the application is going to have along with the client. So if I want to maintain a state, I am going to make use of stateful session bean. Now from where you are going to get the stateless and stateful session beans? So whenever you're going to create an application, and as I've shown you that how to add a servlet file into your application. Okay, I can show you again whenever we are going to do it. So we have learned that how to add a servlet file. We can add an JSP file also, we can add an HTML file also in our application n number of times. So whenever we are going to develop a code using an EJB, that time we are need to add the EJB file. Okay, and while adding the EJB file, in one of the steps it is going to ask us that which type of a session bean you wanted. Okay, it is going to give you three options, that is, one is stateless, one is stateful, and one is singleton. So based on, depending on which type of session bean you are going to use, accordingly your enterprise Java bean code is going to work for you. Okay, I hope you have understood what I just said right now. And then we have a third type, that is what your singleton session bean. So singleton session beans are going to be used. It is going to, now consider this is a third container, sub container inside your whole big container. Okay, so singleton session bean is going to do what? It is going to first of all instantiate one, you can say the object or the instance for the per application. Okay, so if I have 10 application and I want to execute all those 10 applications separately in the singleton session bean container, so every application is going to be instantiated with one object or an instance, so that your container is going to identify every application with that, you can say the instance or an object. Okay, now till the time your application is going to get executed inside a singleton session bean container, till the whole life cycle your application state is going to be maintained. And once the application life cycle is going to get over, once it is destroyed, then it is going to come out of that singleton session bean container. Okay, now when we are going to use all these session beans, all these three types of session beans, if I want to go with the stateful session beans, now every time when I say, you should come into your mind, the picture should come into your mind that yes, we have one big container, okay, inside a server. So we have a client, we have the server, inside the server we have different containers for the different technologies. And one of the technology what we are learning right now is EJB. So we have an EJB container, and inside the EJB container we have three different options, or we can say three different sub containers. One is meant for the stateful, one is meant for the stateless, and one is meant for the singleton. Okay, it depends which container I am going to use to execute my application where EJB code is written. Fine. So what is going to be like use when I'm going to stick to the session beans, this type of a session bean? So if I'm going with the stateful session bean, it will help me to represent, or it will help me to hold the interaction which is going to happen between the Java code or the EJB code which I'm going to develop for an application of a server, and the client which I'm going to have, the either EJB client or any other language which I'm going to use to build a client. So interaction between this client and the, you can say the server which is going to be maintained, is going to be maintained and hold the information when I'm going to stick with the first type, that is your stateful session base. Okay, second, it is also responsible to hold the information about the client, that whatever client is trying to access any methods from the server code, so it's going to be maintaining that information inside your stateful session bean container. Is also going to play a mediator role between your client and the other components of the server application. Is also going to manage the flow of the all the logic codes what we have written in the server application using EJB. So the stateful session bean container is responsible to hold so many things. It will hold the interaction information. It will hold the the methods which clients are trying to access. That type of information also has been hold. It is also going to work like a mediator between client and the application. Is going to manage the workflow, or you can say the code flow of the enterprise bean. Okay, this is where we want to maintain a state. If I don't want to maintain a state, okay, I just want to focus on the performance should be there, to improve the performance, to have a good performance while having the request and response between the client and the server, EJB server. So we can go ahead with the stateless session bean. Okay, there no data has been maintained. There is no data of the method invocation which has happened by the client. There's no data which has been maintained, like whatever the workflow or the code flow is not going to be maintained by the session stateless session bean. Here it is going to be meant for those kind of a things. I'll just give you an example. Say I am using some on I'm ordering something online. Okay, And while ordering online, generally I get an confirmation mail over my email ID. Okay. When I order something, my details like an order ID, my delivery address, my the name, phone numbers, and everything are being placed, are being maintained by the servers. Okay. Whatever mails I am going to get from the email server, which is responsible to send the confirmation based on the order which I have done it. Okay. So the interaction between that email server and the client need not to be maintained. Okay. There is no, you can benefit, you can find it out of maintaining that, email which is going to come from the email server to the client. So you can just skip to have those kind of information and the transaction details, whether the email has sent it or not. Okay. And generally, when we get such emails, they also give one statement that do not reply on such emails because there is no data has been maintained. Fine. So there we can make use of stateless session beans. Fine. We can also make use of web services. This kind of session bean, stateless session bean, is going to help us to implement our web services also. And then third is your singleton session B, which is responsible. As I told you, it is going to be also again one type of a small container where I can make my application to get it execute, and the benefits and the features which singleton session is going to carry is going to be applicable to my application. Okay. So it is going to help me to have an access as a client to the multiple threads or the multiple data of my application concurrently simultaneously, or the application which is going to have an enterprise bean code is being able to perform the task till the time the life cycle of an application is on inside the container called a singleton session bean container. Okay. Now this was all about your first type, that is your session bean, where we had a three subtypes, that is your stateless, stateful, and singleton. Now we are going to learn about the second type, that is a message driven bean. So message driven bean, just have to understand four to five things over here. I'll say, please remember it. So the message driven bean, first of all, is considered as a stateless session bean. Okay, so it's not going to maintain any state. Secondly, it is meant for the server side. Third, whatever transaction you are going to happen, it is aware, it is not going to maintain. Okay. Fourth thing, the message driven bean is acting as a message listener. Okay. So whatever message is going to come from the client is going to listen to that message and is going to pass it to the application server. Fifth thing, it is going to have a package that is javax.jms.message, or you can just simply say that javax.jms.star. JMS means Java Messaging Service. So if you want to implement message driven bean, okay, so just consider if you want to have a container, okay, where you want to have an application who must use a message driven bean concept. Okay, so you can make use of JMS, and that is one of the class which is present, that is called as message class inside a package called as JMS, that is Java Messaging Service, which is responsible to have this message driven bean concept with us. Okay. So it is stateless, it is meant for the server side, it is a transaction aware, not maintaining transaction but aware of the transaction, going to use the javax.jms.star package, is going to be executed by the EJB container. That means inside the EJB container only everything is going to get invoked and executed. Next thing is that the JMS is acting as a message listener of the message which is coming from the client. So here if you can see, there is like, we will see how it is going to work without message driven bean, and then we'll see how it is going to work with message driven bean. So there's a client who is sending a message. So to listen to that message, when we are going to make use of message driven bean container, so we need to implement compulsorily this JMS, who is going to listen to that message which is coming from the client. Once the JMS comes, it is going to be passed into the Java program where the business logic has been written. Once it has been processed by this Java program, it is going to pass to the application server where your session beans are there, which is going to maintain, or depends like which type of session bean you are using it, whether it is a stateless, stateful, or singleton. Okay, so depending upon that, your application server is going to maintain your transaction or the data. Now, in short, message driven bean is not going to have an home and the remote interfaces. That means it is not going to have the marshalling and the unmarshalling which was happening. Okay, so we have learned in detail enough what is marshalling and unmarshalling. It is the conversion of the data of the object to the byte stream, that is marshalling, and reverse of it is called as unmarshalling. Okay, it is not going to have any business method, but it is going to have a message listener method. So the message driven bean is actually that JMS what we are building in between the client and the Java program. It's something called as message driven bean container. Okay, so your JMS is a bean container, message driven bean container, who is having a specific methods. That method is something for listening the messages which are going to come from the client. Is not going to hold any state because it is said that it is a stateless. Okay, it is going to consider every customer as a new customer. Okay, even though it is a previous one who has requested the same thing, but still every time is going to consider as a new, because it is not maintaining anything, any state. It is going to be short lived. Okay, it's not going to be for a life for a longer period. It's not going to represent the shared data of the database. It was there in the session bean also. It is going to be transaction aware but not maintaining the transaction. So now we'll see how it is going to work when we implement the message driven. So we'll have a client, we'll have the message. It is like if I want to implement the message driven bean, so I have to implement the JMS. I have to import the JMS package in my program. It will create automatically the JMS for me, who is going to use some of the message listener method, which will listen to the client message and it will pass it accordingly to the next level. So when we are going to make use of message driven method, what is going to happen? Instead of making use of session beans, I'm going to use a message driven bean. Okay, and it is going to be placed inside the same application server where the previously the session bean used to be. So if I'll just show you that here, if you can see the Java programs are separated, the session beans are being separated and they're going to execute it separately inside your application server. But now here, if you can see, here we have the application server as well as the message driven being written into one single place. Now, how we are going to access our enterprise beans? So how it is possible if I want to access, not I, basically it's the client who is going to access the enterprise bean. That means whatever business logics we have written into a server application, how the client is going to access that, how it is going to be able to them to access all those business logics or the methods we are writing for the server application. So we have two options available. One is no interface view and one is your business interface. Now, no interface view is going to help the client to access all the public methods which are defined inside the server application which has used the enterprise bean. Okay, EJB. So the no interface view, as I told you, is going to help the client to access all the public method which has been defined and which has been written inside the application of the server, and where the application in the server has been written using the enterprise Java bean, that is EJB. Okay, the client may be able to invoke all the public method which is present inside the enterprise Java bean. Okay, business interface is something different. It's a standard Java programming language interface through which the client is not client, actually the server is going to contain all the business logic methods inside the enterprise bean. Okay, so these are the two different things. No interface view is meant for the client and the business interface is meant for the server, where the business methods are going to be included inside your Java bean. So we have three things which is required whenever we try to develop an enterprise bean or enterprise Java bean, or you can say the application using EJB. So we need three things. One is enterprise bean class, one is business interface, and one is helper class. So business interface is going to help us to define the number of business methods, or you can say we can be able to define or develop the business logics. Okay, once we have defined that business logics, your EJB class is going to implement that business logics. Okay, so defining is one thing and implementing the methods is one thing. If required any other classes like exceptions or the utility classes, we have some helper classes also available, which can be, if required by the enterprise bean class, we can make use of it. Now, the last thing of this chapter is three components of any enterprise application. You can find it. So whenever you are going to create an application where you want to implement an EJB, okay, so you'll have libraries which are being created automatically, or the libraries which is required for a specific applications are available automatically whenever we are going to build an application. So I have shown you how to create an application, how to create a project in NetBeans. So whenever you're going to finish that creation of an application, you will get an automatic libraries being generated, and the required libraries are going to be there for the application. So out of that, we'll have in jar files. So jar is something you can also call it as the libraries, required libraries. Okay, it will consist of number of EJB modules. It will consist of number of EJB client modules, some utility modules. Then we'll have a WAR. So we'll have a web application archive. It will contain some web modules. And then we have EAR. It is Enterprise Application Archive. It is going to contain both jar and WAR modules. Okay, so if I can just give you an example of this, that what is this jar, WAR, and EAR. So when we learn about the database connectivity with the servlets, okay, so in that time, in the so connectivity steps, we have written the JDBC connectivity steps. We have written the driver path of MySQL. We have given the URL path of the SQL, MySQL. But one thing is mandatorily going to be required, that is you need to add externally one jar file, you can say one library, which is there easily available, downloadable from the internet, that is MySQL connector. That jar file you needs to download it externally and add it into your library. So your library is going to take all the information about that library, and it will help us to build that connectivity between the client and the servlet. Okay, so you'll have number of libraries, not necessary that you have to use the inbuilt libraries. You have an option to go with the external libraries also. You can make your external APIs to get integrated with the existing one. Fine. So there we end with this chapter. We completed our first chapter of your unit 4. So if you have any doubts, students, you can just ask me. It is open for all. And if you have understood, just let me know, so that we can go ahead with some other thing.